Hey there, this is Natalie, and I've got some more interesting stories for you from Reddit. Remember to subscribe if you like having plenty of new stories to listen to, always read by my real human voice instead of an AI. Now, let's get into the first story. So this is a story from the subreddit r/PettyRevenge. And the user who originally posted it was obsnotmain, which was a throwaway account. It's a fully updated concluded story, and the title is, "My half-sister wanted to show up in a wedding dress to my engagement party, so I changed the party theme so she would fit right in." And OP begins, "My half-sister Heather and I never really got along. We're both 24. My father left my mother for her mother, and we were born the same month, 20 days apart. It has always been weird. It doesn't help that Heather's mom hates me and my mom. By extension, Heather and I didn't have the best relationship. She has always tried to one-up me, even though we both have a similar economic background. I can give examples of this, but for the sake of the word limit, I won't write them here. So, now my fiancé and I got engaged last month and had our engagement party this Saturday. We had planned it originally as a casual formal event. Nice dresses, but not, I'm going to the Met Gala ball nice. More like, we're going to a good restaurant nice. Anyway, my cousin hits me up saying she has to show me something. It was a picture of the dress Heather was gonna wear. This dress, Jesus Christ, it can only be described as opulent. It was long and white, strapless with sewn-in crystals and golden accents. I'm pretty sure it's a wedding dress, but I can't be 100%. This made me really mad, so I decided, frick that. I started texting people telling them that there had been a change of plan, and that instead of casual formal, I decided to make a costume party. My mother's side is crazy for Halloween, so they were immediately on board. I told my father via text and asked for him to relay the message to Heather for her mother, knowing full well that he would forget or leave it to the last minute. Saturday comes along. Guests start showing up, most of them in costumes. Some didn't have time to get one. We just provided them with fun hats and cheap wigs. Heather, my dad, and her mother come like 1 hour late. As soon as she notices that everyone was either wearing elaborate costumes or weird accessories and she didn't stand out, she lost it. Especially when my fiancé came along and told her that her bride dress looks amazing for a cheap costume. She left crying, and her mother and my father told me that I was being childish, and I could have told Heather myself and not have tasked my father. For those interested, my fiancé was dressed as Bubbles and I was dressed as Mojo Jojo. My mom and aunts went as ABBA. Other memorable costumes were Luffy and Zorro, Ian Malcolm and John Hammond, and Jesus. And OP edits the post to include some answers to some questions from the commenters. She begins, "So why did I invite her? It's one of those weird family situations where not inviting them would have been more dramatic. You know when you try pleasing everyone. Plus I still wanted a relationship with my father, so not inviting Heather and her mom would have made things super difficult and made it so my father would have had to choose. When I kept thinking of it, I noticed that my father wouldn't have chosen me in this scenario, which is why I ended up cutting them off." You let her win? No, the point of this is to ruin my half-sister's intention. She wasn't just dressed nicely, as some of you put it. She wore a wedding dress to my engagement party. I'd much rather subvert this whole mess rather than have her smugly sitting at the table with her wedding dress. Also, some of you are really hung up on the cheap wigs part and ignore literally everything else regarding the party. A minority of our guests wore those cheap wigs. Also, it literally doesn't matter. We had a blast. After she left, I didn't even think of her again till a few days later. I don't regret the costume party. I wish I thought of it earlier, to be honest. Also, I can't believe I have to say this, but the lady on the picture is not Heather. It's also not the dress she wore. I looked for a picture that looked approximately like the dress. And in the top comments, the filthy DIL says, she'll want to wear it at your wedding too. May I suggest a Renaissance fair theme? Late Nerd says, the cherry on top of this delicious revenge sundae is how you used your father's general shittiness to work in your favour. Absolutely brilliant. Paul from Atlanta says, especially when my fiancé came along and told her the bride dress looked amazing for a cheap costume. So he's a keeper. Excellent petty revenge. Scantron2739 says, the best part is he was in a Bubbles costume, LMAO. Great Pop 643 says, I saw your post on Am I the Butthole first. What you did was so petty. I love it. Please tell me you disinvited them to your entire wedding after that though. OP says, I've officially gone non-contact with that side of the family. My father was a spineless slug. I never looked forward to seeing him and had little love left for him. Yeah, the half-sister just sounds awful and obnoxious, and the father, he really didn't have her back. I'm sure she didn't go no contact with his side of the family just over what Heather chose to wear to her engagement party, because otherwise she wouldn't have invited them in the first place after she found out what she was planning to wear. So it really must have been a kind of culmination of the way he always put the half-sister before her. But if they're half-sisters, you know, she's not her stepsister, and they were born the same year, 20 days apart. He was either cheating on her mother when she was just a few days pregnant, or having an affair while trying to conceive with his wife. What an absolute scumbag. I mean, maybe that's why Heather feels like she has to kind of try and one-up the OP all the time, because the circumstances of their births must have been pretty weird. Still, there is an update from OP from 20 months later, and it begins, I had planned countless times to update this post. I even asked the mods if it was allowed, but I was too lazy and always stopped halfway through, lol. Anyway, I keep seeing my post as a MFing TikTok. I also saw an account that pretended to have an update. Apparently my husband cheated with my half-sister, my mother exploded, and my grandma is a dog. On to the update. I got married. It was an eventful and thankfully drama-free day. My father was not in attendance. After my engagement party, I realised he would never choose me willingly. Even if he loves me, he doesn't love me enough to stand up for me. He constantly allows his daughter and wife to walk all over me and even become abusive. So I wrote him a lengthy email from my old school days email account. It detailed my resentful feelings against him and uninvited him from the wedding. Then I logged out, because I know myself. I would be upset with his answer, and if he wouldn't not answer, I would also be upset. I also blocked him and his family from all access, and I went cold turkey, freezing even. I changed phone providers and deleted my social media accounts for a while. He did try to contact me through my mother. She said it was just upsetting, so I told her I did not want to know. So I just cut him off. And boy, my life improved drastically. We had an amazing wedding. Unhinged things that happened after the wedding. I got a cease and desist letter from my half-sister. It was very vague and weird, but we quickly found out that it was only a Google copy-paster. My stepmother followed me to the supermarket and tried to intimidate me to apologise to Heather. She made the produce wildly uncomfortable. My father tried to pick me up at work. He was walking next to me while I went to my car. He was trying to get me to apologise to Heather and her mom. He said that I should be the bigger person and that I know how both of them are. So I just told him that he must be mistaken because my father is dead. He just stood there as I drove off. Then they started to bother the rest of the extended family. Heather and her mom apparently wanted them to cut me off finally, which backfired spectacularly, because now they are cut off, which also means that they're excluded from a lot of family events that they were looking forward to. Plus, they can't use my uncle's cabin. So Heather's mom had allegedly been at her sister's since the whole breakdown. I have to be honest, I don't know how much of this is true. As you know, the toxic gossip train always has to be taken with a grain of salt. I don't know, but I think it's funny. A sad thing is that I don't even miss my father. His absence has made zero negative effect on my life. We did have one more costume party around Halloween, but this time we gave everyone more time, and it was even more fun. My mom's side of the family all pitched in. We got a venue and invited a bunch of people. I recommend this totally. I met so many of my cousins' friends who I've kept in touch with. Nothing else has changed. I still have my old job. I'm not pregnant. We still have the same old apartment. We did redecorate though. So that is all for me. Not at all too dramatic. And in the comments, TXD Mom76 says, "Sometimes the best revenge is just living your best life. Good on you for doing so." Desperate Smile says, "Congrats on improving your life by no longer giving them any space in it." Tilly Jane says, "What was the fake cease and desist for? Stop holding costume parties." OP says, "For disruptive behaviour. I found the template she used and everything. If you Google cease and desist letter template, it should be the 4th search result if I'm not wrong." Wow, now I can see why her father would try to get back in touch with her, but to get back in touch with her just to try and nag her to apologise to Heather and her mother, the absolute reason why she went no contact with him in the first place. Just, what was he thinking? And why were they bullying her to try and get her to apologise to Heather? All she did was foil Heather's plan to upstage her at her own engagement party. They just sound terrible. It is a shame she lost her relationship with her father over it, but it sounds like she did explain to him, why. And this can't really have made a dent in how he feels about OP, because the only time he did go and see her, it was to try and get her to apologise to her half-sister, which is just reinforcing that he, would never choose OP over her. Even when, to anybody on the outside, it would be clear that Heather was in the wrong by trying to disrupt OP's engagement party anyway. It's a good petty revenge story, and, it ended well for OP. But I can't help feeling a little bit saddened that that relationship ended so poorly, just because her father decided to be, spineless when it came to standing up to his wife and his other daughter. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Here's a fun story that was posted to r/NoStupidQuestions by user Lady Microdose, who asked, "What were my parents doing with a jar of beans during sex?" And her original post begins, "When I was about 7, I was snooping and I found a jar of dry beans under their bed. My mom came up and said, 'No, don't touch that.' I asked, 'Why? What is it?' She wouldn't answer. Then she sat me down and said, 'It's something we use for sexual purposes.' I had already had the talk by then. Now that I'm a 31-year-old woman, I never figured out what they were doing with the beans, and have never heard of anyone using uncooked beans for foreplay. Does anyone know? Do I even want to know?" And then there were some relevant comments. The first commenter says, "Are you sure it was beans, or was that your assumption as a child? It may have been pills to help with things your dad has issues with." OP says, "I promise they were beans." And then to another commenter replies that they were pinto beans. In other top comments, the City Spark 2 says, "It's possible they hid something inside the uncooked beans, so it was less conspicuous." Wild Ludicolo says, "OP, there was a butt plug amidst those beans." Large Astronaut 6705 says, "Why not ask your mom about it right now? Be like, 'Mom, you remember me finding that jar of beans under the bed when I was 7? What the hell were you two doing with that jar of beans?'" Chases Singed says, "Yes, OP is definitely old enough to have a talk about the birds and the beans." Mysterious Self 1133 says, "Maybe they're keeping track of the number of times." Now, I have absolutely no idea what beans could be used for in that capacity, so I'm very glad we have an update. Where OP says, "Me, when we lived in Tennessee, you had a mason jar of dry beans, and you told me not to touch it because it was used for sexual things. Mom: oh, that was just a silly count. They weren't used for anything kinky. I guess it was more or less just curious about how many times would add up over the course of our marriage. Me: oh, so you put a bean in every time you did it? Mom: yes. Unfortunately, the average has dropped considerably over the last couple of years. Me: I'm sorry to hear that, LOL. And OP adds, in the relevant comments, they're evangelical Christians who went through years of guilt because they had a son out of wedlock. I wonder if she put black beans in for the times they fornicated. I also wonder if my mother ever stares at the jar and wonders which bean is which brother. I don't have the guts to ask. A commenter says, I don't really get why she felt the need to tell you it was for something sexual then. Like, if you'd found a dildo, then it would make sense to be straight up and say it was a intimacy thing, because it's kind of hard to explain away. But she easily could have said the beans were for something else. And OP replies, I was a curious child and would pry and pry to no end. Another commenter says, I saw your update where you say it was to count all the times they did it, but I'm still just so amused thinking about how many years of confusion this must have caused you. I imagine you as a teen, getting into the world of sex and being like, but when did the beans come in? OP replies, that's exactly how it went, LOL. My mum said, I'm sorry, I can't imagine what you must have been imagining all these years. And then there's another more serious comment where somebody says, maybe my parents just weren't as straightforward with me at that age about that stuff, but it's honestly wild to me that she volunteered the information that it was a sex thing when her kid found random beans under the bed, LOL. And OP replies, I wasn't a normal kid. I was asking incredibly deep questions that 7-year-olds don't ask, LOL. I'd also been molested at a young age, so she was kind of forced to explain things, but I don't feel like explaining that to everyone who says it's crazy or offensive to them somehow that I already knew about intimacy at 7, but you were nice about it. I also think a lot of people in my generation were strategically sexualized at young ages, weird Freemasonic shit. And come on y'all, if you're a millennial like me, you'd already heard Fantasy by Ludacris around age 10 and knew all the words. Yeah, I really can't imagine asking my mother any question at the age of 7 and her replying with, it's a sex thing. I bet OP was that kid at school that all the other kids asked for like information about these things. But what do you guys think about this story? Did you have any theories about what the beans were for before OP got her answer? Let me know down in the comments. Now, I've had a few pet stories about dogs and cats on the channel before, but this is the first time I've had a story about a bearded dragon. This was originally posted to Am I the Butthole on a throwaway account, and it's titled, Am I the Butthole for not allowing my sister near my bearded dragon after doing a TikTok trend with my pet? Ah, those TikTok trends causing mayhem again for the Redditors. And OP begins, throwaway because I don't want this linked to my account and I'm on mobile, so the formatting might be weird. I, 18 female, have a bearded dragon named Phil, who I've had for about a year now. Phil is deeply loved by me and my family. My sister, 15 female, who I will call Jane, really likes to make TikToks of Phil, which I have completely no problem with, since they're normally just videos of Phil running around or doing something silly, like opening his mouth when he basks. Yesterday, my sister came up to show me a TikTok she'd made of Phil. There is a trend on TikTok of putting butter on dogs, as some audience plays over it of this guy saying, butter dog. Well, Jane showed me a video of her putting some soft butter on Phil, so that she could follow the trend. When I saw that, I became very upset. I had seen a video recently of someone explaining how doing this trend with bearded dragons can be dangerous, because the butter will stick to their skin, and if they get put back under their basking light, the butter will heat up and basically burn the bearded dragon's skin. I told Jane to delete the video and that she can't do that stuff with Phil, and quickly got him out from under his basking light that she'd put him back under after the video, and started to bathe him in the tub to try and get off any of the butter she didn't wipe off. My sister came and told me I was overreacting and that it's just a fun trend. I snapped at her and told her I'm not letting her near Phil until she apologises to me and promises not to do trends like these with Phil again, and ask me every time she wants to make a video with Phil. My sister got angry and told me she wasn't apologising for just wanting to have fun with Phil and that I can't take Phil away from her. After I finished making sure all the butter was off, I put him back in his tank that's in my room, and I told her she's not allowed to come in and take Phil. My parents found out this morning and told me I was out of line for what I did and that it was just an innocent video. They told me I need to stop freaking out so much over things that involve Phil. My sister said she's not apologising because she didn't know it would hurt Phil, so I should get over it and let her see Phil again. I feel like I can't trust her with Phil though. If she hadn't shown me the video, Phil would have sat in his tank getting burned under his basking light, and I wouldn't even know until it was too late. I think I might be the butthole because I could be overreacting like my family say I am, and for yelling at her when she didn't know that doing the trend would hurt Phil. So Reddit, am I the butthole here? And she edited it to add, "Thank you for the awards. I will be trying my best to reply to everyone, but just know I've been reading everyone's comments and I appreciate all the advice I've been getting." Edit 2. Wow, didn't expect all this attention. People have been asking for a pic of Phil though, so here it is. Edit 3/mini update. I'm just going to answer a question I've been getting a lot. Yes, I did tell her and my parents why it was dangerous to put butter on his head. I'm going to sit them down sometime today or tomorrow and try to explain to them today with evidence to show them why what my sister did wasn't just a fun trend, but could have hurt or even killed Phil. I also ordered a lock for his tank. Thank you everyone for the awards and support. I'm going to be sitting down and reading all the new comments once I finish my online work. And the overall consensus on Reddit was that she was not the butthole. I mean, I think she was being reasonable. She's the one who owns the dragon and knows the most about how to look after him. And while her sister was just innocently following something that she'd seen on TikTok, without perhaps even thinking to look up whether putting butter on a bearded dragon could be damaging to it, it is kind of important to get her to actually explain what she's going to do in a video with OP's pet, so that OP can check that it's safe or encourage the younger sister to check that it's safe before she just goes ahead and does it. She's really just being a responsible owner to her pet, and hopefully it will teach the sister to do a little bit more research before trying anything new like that, rather than just, filming Phil doing his normal things that he would just be doing anyway. Though I can see why the idea of putting butter on him for the butter dog trend would be funny. As long as it was done by someone who knew to really carefully wash it off before putting him back in his tank under his light. There's just something random about it that I find amusing. Maybe I should be on TikTok getting my daily dose of brain rot, eh? But anyway, there is an update to this one. And OP says, "Hello, so sorry I haven't been on in a while. Things have been very busy for me, but I'm here with an update. So after my last post and getting all your feedback, I had ordered a lock for Phil's tank and put it on once I got it, so that my sister couldn't just get him. I waited a bit to see if my sister would apologise, but she didn't. So I sat down both my parents and sister to go over again why I wasn't allowing her to see Phil and how what she did was not okay. I'd made a slideshow and everything about how putting butter on bearded dragons was in fact not a harmless trend. I told her that I wasn't mad at her for doing it since she didn't know, but I was upset over how she reacted. It took a lot of explaining, and I even used some advice you guys gave me on how to best explain it. And after a lot of talking and a bit of arguing, it seemed they finally all got it. My sister got upset and apologised to me for how she reacted and seemed genuinely upset after she realised what she did to Phil. My parents also apologised for not taking my side and scolding me for what rules I set in place. The lock is still staying on the tank just in case, but my sister is now allowed to see him and play with him if she asks me, and she's not allowed to make any more videos of Phil without me being there to watch. She seems a bit irritated by the rules, but she follows them. I also got her to take down the video off of TikTok, and she ended up making a video on how what she did was stupid and to not do what she did, which I'm pretty pleased with. She's gone back to making her harmless videos of Phil just running and playing, and all is going well now. I also want to thank Reddit again for the advice and reassurance that what I was doing wasn't wrong, since I honestly was pretty lost at that time. Phil is also doing well, and he appreciates all the compliments on the picture I posted. He knows he's a handsome boy, so he's happy to have gotten the appreciation he deserves. Well, that was possibly the least dramatic story I've read out on here, but it was still kinda nice. The family conflict got resolved, Phil the dragon's okay, and all is well in the world. But what do you guys think? Do you like stories like this, or do you prefer the big blowout dramas? I do try and have a bit of a mix between the kind of slice of life stuff and the epic kind of unusual or life-changing situations that some of these stories involve. Plus, I think these cuter stories can be a little bit of a palate cleanser when placed next to some of the really serious ones. But let me know what you like. And that's it for this video, but there are plenty more to check out on the channel, and if you watch them, it really helps me out, where I need many watch hours to get this channel monetized. Thanks for watching this one, and I hope to see you again very soon.